the civil lawsuit that was filed against Jay-Z and Puff, naming them as defendants, accusing them of raping a 13-year-old girl at a VMA's after party. That lawsuit has been dismissed, and I want to talk about it. Now, this obviously is not breaking news. This news came out a couple weeks ago. I'm not a journalist. I'm not breaking news. I'm an attorney, and I'm just giving my thoughts because this is such a monumental case. And so, let's get right into it. I want to welcome you back if you've watched some of my videos before. If you don't know me, my name is Jamahl Kersey. I am a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years. And on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts so you are in the know. Now, listen, we were going, pretty heavy with the videos in this case. And, you'll have to excuse me. I kind of fell off. I've got a couple of attempted murder cases I'm working on and a double homicide, and that took a lot of my time. I'm a real life practicing attorney, and so my firm handles a lot of cases, and that the content creation takes a backseat to my actual attorney job. But in the interim, this voluntary dismissal was filed by the plaintiff. So Tony Busby, on behalf of his client, filed a voluntary dismissal with prejudice. Means that this lawsuit cannot be filed again. And what does that let us know? That lets us know that this lawsuit was completely meritless, right? Because, why would they voluntarily dismiss a lawsuit with prejudice if there was any merit to the claims, right? The accusations were extremely serious. I mean, we talked about this in other videos where you could be accused of and convicted of murder, right? And people still might rock with you. If you were convicted of, and the reason I'm talking about convictions is because when we're talking about rape, that's usually a criminal case versus a civil case, right? It is a crime to rape somebody, right? And it doesn't matter what the age of the person is. That's the type of a crime where people do a lot of years in prison, and rightfully so, right? If you violate somebody's body in that way, then you absolutely deserve to be removed from society. You need to sit down and be just away from society for a while, right? And that's, let's just say the rape of an adult. We're talking here in this case, the accusation was the rape of a 13-year-old girl who was under the influence of alcohol and allegedly drugged while another celebrity sat up and watched this situation. And I don't want to go through the facts again because now I don't even want to give any merit to that situation now that we know that this thing is done and again, shouldn't have been filed in the first place. And, just kind of going back to that thought, let's just say for whatever reason, Tony Busby wanted to get off the case and say, okay, well, I can't move forward with this anymore, right? If this woman, right, who's now in her late 30s, said, hey, I want to carry my case forward, and if this had happened to her, then she very well should have, right? If this actually happened to you, then you deserve to go after every single million that you deserve because there's no possible way any dollar amount could make up for being violated in that way. So, whether your attorney wants to carry forward or not, you definitely would continue to push that case forward. But the fact that this is now, this case has been voluntarily dismissed, it lets me know that there was no merit because, you went so far as to contact an attorney, right? The attorney that, or the law firm that Tony Busby's firm got the case from. So she spoke with them. The case got transferred to Busby. Their firm did, whatever vetting they did, and decided, hey, we're going to file this lawsuit and we're going to name Puff Daddy as, the person who did this. And then we're going to add Jay-Z's name. And so you went that far, right? Albeit, anonymously, right? Because she was able to proceed as a Jane Doe. But if you went that far, then you were all in and you were more than willing to proceed and push this case forward so that you could get a payday, right? You went on the news. You gave a whole, interview about what had happened to you, right? Pulling on the heartstrings of millions of people who buried Jay-Z, who buried Puff. They were more than willing, without having seen any evidence whatsoever, to say that these things happened, and be prepared to, drain each of their bank accounts and bury them under the jail. Again, as somebody, if you did something like this, then you deserve everything that's coming to you. But for it to have ultimately been exposed, and still, they had the opportunity to go through the discovery process, right? And submit written questions to Puff, submit written questions to Jay-Z, to eventually have them undergo deposition. So there's a lot that they could have, dug up to build up this case. But the fact that they voluntarily dismissed this lawsuit this early on, again, just shows that there was no merit to this case whatsoever. And so the interesting thing, and I want to clarify, because if you watched my videos, I mentioned how this case was not going to be dismissed early on, that they were going to have to go through the discovery process. But what I meant by that, because, obviously this case ended up getting dismissed, what I meant by that was Jay-Z, his legal challenges weren't going to result in the judge dismissing the case per se, right? So obviously they raised all the issues regarding the inconsistencies, and we're not going to go through all those inconsistencies. You can watch the past videos, or you can watch Alex Spiro's PowerPoint presentation to go through the inconsistencies. But he was naming those, right, in order to demonstrate that the likelihood of this having happened was slim to none, but actually to say, this absolutely did not happen, right? But the judge was not just going to deprive a plaintiff of pushing their case forward without giving them the opportunity to go through the discovery process, because again, the law favors resolution of cases on the merits, not based on, technicalities. So she was going to have the opportunity to go through the discovery process. And it is very well possible that on the other side of the discovery process, then the case might have been dismissed, but it still could have been that the judge did not dismiss the case, and it'd have to go all the way to trial in order for Jay-Z and Puff to clear their name. Fortunately, it didn't go down like that. But the reason is not because of something that the judge would have done. It's because the plaintiff decided to voluntarily dismiss their case. And so, there's a major lesson to be learned, because while it's not likely that you or anyone gets sued for millions, like in this context, but there is a strong chance that you or someone you love could be accused of having done something that you didn't do someday. And maybe this is the lesson to say that, hey, we should not jump to conclusions in these situations. We should wait until the evidence and the discovery and everything plays itself out. And things are not always as they seem. And, it's just really scary, because so many people had already jumped to the conclusion that Jay-Z absolutely did this, that Puff absolutely did this, again, without a shred of evidence supporting the plaintiff's claims. And not only was there no evidence to support the plaintiff's claims, there's also a ton of contradictions, and people were just willing to look completely past that and allow whatever biases or prejudices that they have against these men, and allow them to reach the conclusion that they did these things. And when it comes, Puff is in a different situation, because, he's in jail and he's facing criminal charges, and there's a whole slew of other lawsuits, but this is the only one against Jay-Z. And I'm just really surprised that the people who are supposed to be in his circle, there really wasn't anybody coming out and saying anything. The only person I saw really was Stephen A. Smith, who came out and said, "This has been my friend for decades. I cannot see him doing anything like this. I know for a fact he didn't do this." There's a lot to be said for that, right? That's what you would want somebody who, is your boy to come out and say. But even just kind of going back to myself, and obviously I don't know Jay-Z, I don't know Shawn Carter. A lot of you guys were flaming me up saying that, oh, well, I must have been bought and paid for by Rock Nation and all that kind of stuff. Nah, man, I admit it to you all. Listen, I'm a practicing attorney. I know how to use, my lawyer brain, and I can separate, my biases and my personal beliefs. But, I admit it. Hey, listen, I am a fan of this man. I'm a fan of the musician. There's no other rapper who I've seen in concert more than, besides Nas. So it's Nas, and then it's Jay-Z, right? Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas are in my top three, right? Jay-Z tends to be number one on any given day. So, and I appreciate and admire the businessman, right? I've also said that between Jay and Puff, they were huge inspirations for me to eventually become an entrepreneur and own my own law firm, right? And create jobs and create opportunities and internships and all that kind of stuff. These two gentlemen provided the blueprint, or at least provided the spark, the idea that you could, be a young black man and forge your own way, right? And chart your own territory, right? So it did mean a lot to me that somebody that I look up to in that sense ended up having these accusations, hurled against them, right? But even setting aside all of that, my thought as a criminal defense attorney was, listen, I am not going to put something like that on a man without seeing any evidence. I have to wait and see. I have to wait and see that there's something more than allegations in a complaint before I jump to the conclusion that they did something this serious. And to the extent you didn't feel that way, that's definitely something that you should be questioning within yourself. A lot of people had a lot to say about the aggressive nature in which Jay-Z's defense was carried out, right? You had that PowerPoint presentation. That's something that you generally don't see, right? Where you have ongoing litigation and a lawyer goes out and puts on a full-blown presentation that almost was like a miniature closing argument for the media. But you can see, hey, there was a lot of damage control that needed to happen, right? From a business standpoint, right? Jay-Z, as a, multi-billionaire, right? It's got a lot going on. And there's a lot of companies that were dealing with him or that are continuing to deal with him, including, the NFL, where, hey, listen, that's a toxic situation, right? You are being accused of raping a child, right? So, to have that out there, to be able to say, hey, listen, we understand you have to do your due diligence. You got to do your investigation and everything. But just understand, this didn't happen. We're putting this information out there so that you can, feel comfortable maintaining your relations with Jay-Z. But a lot of you had a problem with the aggressive nature of how the legal team was proceeding with this, right? And we even saw in the court's ruling, right? And a lot of people said, oh man, Jay-Z's lawyer got ripped apart by the judge. And mind you, the judge did have some harsh language for Alex Spiro and said how this, the litigation or the motions and the language in the motions isn't helping the client. And what I said was, don't read too much into that. Because, while it's not fun to get reprimanded by a judge, that's her admonishment or her criticism wasn't going to have, a long term. It wasn't going to have a big impact on this case, right? And ultimately, obviously, the case got dismissed. And so, it was really important to understand because, isn't that what you would want to have happen, right? If you were accused of something so vile, so ugly, so heinous as raping a 13-year-old child, wouldn't you want your lawyer to do every single thing within their capacity, within their capability to defend you and clear your name? I know I would. And so, I just wonder if you were killing Jay-Z and you were killing his lawyer for their aggression. Now, on the other side of where we're at this point, again, with the plaintiff voluntarily dismissing her claim, now do you sing a different tune? I wonder. I hope so, right? The other major lesson is understanding that when someone makes a false accusation against you, whether it's, in this situation, a rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, a lot of times when they lie about the main thing, they're not going to go back on lying about that main thing. So, he assaulted me, he raped me, he did, XYZ to me, right? But it's going to be the outside fringe details where you're able to point out the inconsistencies in order to demonstrate that that person is not being honest. And that's exactly the way the defense went about it in this case, right? And that's where we get to all the inconsistencies. Now, again, as I conceded in past videos, just because all these inconsistencies existed didn't necessarily mean that, that these gentlemen didn't do what they were being accused of. Obviously, we can now say that confidently, right? That they didn't do these things. But yes, a person can be either inconsistent or lying about other things or just wrong about other things and be telling the truth about the main thing. But it does seriously call into question, whether they're telling the truth about the main thing. And so, in the other part of it is that, people who lie about things, they lie about other things, right? And it's hard to, make everything line up. It's hard to account for everything. There's just going to be other things that they're lying about. There's going to be obvious things that they lie about because, people who lied, they just lie for no reason. And so again, you're able to take those things and point out those inconsistencies. And ideally, they end up admitting that they are lying. But if they don't, then, in trial, that's how you're able to rip apart a complaining witness or a victim, right? By being able to point out all these different places that they're lying and then being able to tell a jury, hey, if you believe that this witness, if you conclude that they've lied about certain things and you find that material, then you can just throw out their whole testimony. You don't have to believe anything that they say, right? And that can be a very powerful, defense method at trial. Some of you guys got fooled in the context, of Jay-Z's extortion lawsuit, and I don't know what's going to become of that, but some of you seem to have gotten fooled by the talk about the demand letter, right? Oh, well, he was just trying to set up a mediation. Well, what do you think the end goal of the mediation is, right? The end goal of the mediation is to get money. And so think about it. What if he would have, just like most people do, as a part of damage control, say, hey, man, let me just settle this before it gets out, right? Let me settle it before this information goes public. Let me make sure that I don't get named in the lawsuit. How many millions would he been on the hook for, right? What would that have been worth? So he very well could have been in a situation where he paid out millions of dollars for something that he never did in order to avoid his name getting dragged through the mud, which is ultimately what happened. And another thing that I said was that, hey, listen, no matter how this thing shakes out, unfortunately, he will forever have associated with his name this accusation. There's no way to undo that, right? Independent of if he had gone to trial and this case got dismissed, or, thankfully early on in this situation, the case is dismissed. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done in the lawsuit that he has filed against Busby and the law firm. Apparently, from my understanding, he said he suffered, 20 million in losses, right? In deals that, either, fell through the cracks or didn't go through based on this case being pending. And you can see that, right? Again, if you're a businessman doing deals, there's going to be a lot of companies that say, hey, man, I really can't, do business with somebody who is facing these type of accusations. And then just the general reputational harm is difficult. And the other part, just home life, right? I mean, this man has a teenage daughter, and think about, just how, cruel and mean that kids can be, right? And your father has been accused of rape of a child. It just, the home life with his wife Beyonce and his other kids, and just everything, the mental stress and anguish of knowing that you are being dragged through the mud, and you're probably going to be in this for the long haul, right? Because I'm sure his lawyer let him know, hey, listen, we may end up having to go through the discovery phase. We may end up having to go through trial. It may be, this thing may be pending for a whole nother year before your name gets cleared. And so to have to go through all that, I think if he has a lawsuit pending, he deserves every penny that's coming to him. And, again, when we think about, Tony Busby's response to the position from the defense that this case is BS, he had mentioned that another law firm vetted this claim, but that's just not good enough. You are the person who drafted the complaint. You signed your name on that document. That means that you are supposed to have, thoroughly investigated and vetted, and you don't have to have every, I dotted and T crossed. I mean, that's, discovery, the discovery process is for you to gather the balance of the information that you need in order to go forward. But, I think that, again, with what ended up getting exposed, the minimal level of vetting of this case would have exposed that, hey, there's some red flags here. There's some things that we probably need to sort out before we file this lawsuit. And they didn't do that. And that's how we ended up in this situation. But again, thankfully, this case has turned out the way it did. And these men, at least, again, with Puff, he's got a whole laundry list of other things that he's got to deal with. But for Jay, fortunately, he's out from under this and can, move on. There's a lot of, damage and that's been done within his family. And I'm sure there's a lot of, healing that they have to undergo to get past this. But I'm just glad that that this thing didn't have to drag out any more than it actually did. So, what are your thoughts? Let me know, because I mean, my comment section was so divided. We had some people who were like, there's no way this is true. And other people, again, who were, fully prepared to bury Jay-Z and Puff over this situation. So, if you were on one side of the fence, did you end up coming to the other side? Do you feel, let me know how you feel. How do you feel about this news coming out in the way that it did? Well, I hope you got something out of this. If you did, show me some love. Hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching. And until next time, peace.